Yeah, I'm going to give you all the bad jokes that large language models and ChatGPT don't give you. So brace yourselves. So that's a picture of me. I'm Jon Lunn. I'm a principal consultant at Cloud Formations. Just do data engineering, basically. That picture of me, I'm fatter and younger, but I'm older but thinner, so it sort of balances out. Cool. Who's using Fabric at the moment? Who's using variable libraries at the moment? Oh, okay. Okay, right, cool. So we have another slide with me in it. Okay. So Fabric variable libraries, if you don't know what they are a place to store your variables in a sort of library format. That's it. Go for pizza. But they're centralized, consistent, maintainable, collaborative friend. I should have thought something with C instead of maintainable to keep the C in there. So a lot of the times, particularly in notebooks and in data flows Gen 2 and in data pipelines, you don't have to hard code values as much. So you can maintain one location for your team to come and get various variables or using a data pipeline or a notebook, maybe a SQL connection for a logging database, something that's very generic. And it's the good old right ones used many times. Who uses data pipelines in Fabric? Notebooks, data, Gen 2 data flows. Cool. Well, you can all use them there. Right, yeah. Yeah, so centralized and consistent. Anyone here got naming and code conventions in their organization? Wow, you're in a mess. I can feel the technical debt from here. So you have some sort of naming convention, so you can name things very, very nice and easily. If you want a naming convention, I think we've got an open source version. If I just contact me, I can throw you to it. And hopefully it should simplify your development and deployment. Who uses deployment pipelines in Fabric? Yeah, they're a nightmare, aren't they? And also who uses the CI/CD DevOps pipelines? They're not so bad. I don't like deployment pipelines. So I'd like to show you a photograph of me using Fabric before deployment pipelines where I had a full head of hair. Since then, I've lost hair because deployment pipelines are terrible, functionally terrible. So yeah, I'll come into that in a second. So yeah, collaboration. Who likes collaborating? Okay, cool. Who uses Azure Key Vault? You don't use Azure Key Vault, where are you keeping your secrets? Just a hard code them in, just on a notepad somewhere. So yeah, so for using Fabric variable libraries, so when your notebook or data pipeline or whatever reads from the variable library, they're not secure. And I'll show you why they aren't secure in a moment. But yeah, they're perfect for non-secret values, database names, connection strings, parameter defaults, anything you need to do to read something from a central location. Yeah. Two reasons why they're not secret. Well, the first reason is if you're using Azure DevOps to back up for source control and you save your item to source control, it will throw anything in the variable library to source control. So if you've got access to your DevOps, you can see your secret things. Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to stress it. This will be my most repeated thing: non-secret values only. If you need to source something sensitive like service principal secret ID or something like that, or a password, you need to use Azure Key Vault. Hopefully, Microsoft will roll out a little tick box you can do to say that this particular item in the variable library is secret, so people can't expose it. Anyway, so cool. So the next slide is I'm going to show you a variable library. All right. This is where it all goes messy, right here. Right. Second. Let's duplicate these displays. I hate this laptop so much. Right, okay. So you create a variable library by going to your workspace. New item, Oops, if you spell right. Create a variable library, create a variable library for you. So basically, it's I've named one here. So you have the name of the variable, the data type, the value. So when you create a variable library, you'll only get the default value set straight away. And value sets allows you to specify which is the active sort of set to use. So you have a dev, test, and production environment. You have a variable library, your dev, test, and production active sets, and then set each one to be active in your various environment, which is cool. If you have like token regeneration, SSS token that you need to swap out, you can have a active value set and then switch it to another active value set. Sorry, another set. Brilliant. So cool. So again, nice little name. You can store in here strings, booleans, date times, the usual suspects. Most of the stuff I tend to do is in strings. And say by default you have an active value set. So when you read from the variable library, it will read from this value set. And I can change that by set as active. So now when I run some code, I'll read from that active value set. And that's all you sort of need to know about variable libraries. So you have the name of the variable to use somewhere, the type, the value, and where you go. You can, oops, where is it? They changed it. Oh yeah, so you can add a note if you want to do that. Sounds a little bit too much like documentation, and us developers, we don't really like documentation, but you can add a note to say where it is, where it comes from, the domain of the variable. So as you can see here, I've got workspace ID, database connection ID, DB ID, lakehouse ID, another lakehouse, sorry, connection ID, and I've got select stuff here. So if I want to add a new variable, new, so it's a string. Now, annoyingly, when you have alternative value sets, it auto fills in everything for you, which I don't like. But the trick is, if you don't like that behavior, because if you have a dev, test, and production string that changes, you have to delete that item out, copy the new item in, delete the one out, copy the item in. So do you know the old password trick? So when you have put password in, you have to repeat your password. And when you have to repeat your password, it doesn't allow you to copy and paste your password in, does it? So you type it in the bottom one, then copy and paste it into the top one. Yeah, so do the same here. Do use the latest one or one that's not the first one, and it won't fill it in. So yeah, so if I just do that, it doesn't fill any others in. Not doing it now because I deleted it out. But you can have obviously various different items in your variable library. So it's very simple and very straightforward. You can lock down this. Oh, just press save. Where am I? Workspace dev. Manage permissions. So you have read, write, reshare. So you can share variable libraries to other people. You have read access only for some people. So you want to be able to read them but not overwrite them. And you've got write access for admins or something, so they can do all the really cool things of destroy your passwords. It has happened. That tends to be the thing that tends to happen, is someone overwrites something. I've got select stuff, which is a select statement, just to show you can put anything in here and use it in a notebook. Okay, does that seem straightforward? Variables, what type they are, what the value is, and I say you can change your active value set. I need to change this back to active, so I'm not using test. I do have so this is my test environment, and there's no data pipelines in here. There's just the lakehouse and a SQL database and the variable library which I've deployed earlier. So if I look in here in the test area, I've set the test value set as active. So when I do use anything in there in the test workspace, I'll read from this test value set. So just remember, you have active value sets. And they can be for anything. They can be for your daily test production. I'll say you can have primary and secondary keys. You can switch things over, and then that's great. You can do that sort of stuff. Or if you're changing some of the values in, service principal IDs or secrets that have expired, you can put these in there and then swap them over quite nicely. Cool. Right, yeah. What we've got to do next? Oh. I hate this laptop so much. Right. Okay. Will that work? Cool. So variable libraries are scoped at the workspace level. So you can't have, like, Azure Key Vault is accessible from many workspaces or many applications. It's a nice centralized location. Variable libraries are at the workspace level. So you can't do this. Can't have like a common workspace and feed all the values into dev, test, and prod. Don't forget we have active value sets as well. And you can only use one active value set. So this wouldn't work if you did have a common one. So if you had something in a variable library in your common and it was set for dev as your active value set, dev, test, and prod would be reading that dev variable entries. Yeah. So you have to decide two things between one of two options, sorry, when you're creating your variable libraries. How do you want to maintain them? So do you want to create in dev a variable library with your dev, test, and production active set, then deploy them across your workspaces? But then you can have your test and your production variables in dev as well as in test, and it's also in production. Yeah. So you can do that. You can deploy items across, or do you want to do a sort of manually updated one? So you have a variable library, you name the same variable library across all three workspaces, and then just maintain the variables for that each particular environment. Yeah. Which both have their strengths and weaknesses. So you just go to one place in dev, then you update and deploy your variable library across the workspaces. Or if you want to keep various things isolated, do a separate one. You will have to name the variable library the same. So you can't have variable library underscore dev underscore test and underscore prod for each environment, because the name has to remain the same. Otherwise, you have to go into your notebooks and your pipelines and repoint them to the renamed variable library. So just call it, as I had, MJL variable library, and that exists across all three workspaces. Don't name them. We've had this where they've named them differently, and you've gone into data. Customers gone into the data pipeline, then having to reset the variable libraries. What's the point? You want a nice, easy, frictionless way of deploying stuff, which variable libraries do. So keep them named the same across each workspace. And when you deploy them using the previous method, the name will remain the same anyway. Cool. Any questions? So you can store your variables, you can secure them, and you can use them across your workspaces, but you have to choose how you're going to deploy them. That's the hardest choice you're going to have to do. Yes.
Several, because I don't use any of this. The first was, so you can have multiple variable sets, I think it was.
Yes, that's the active set, yeah.
Not just the two. And those are what you would label like dev, test, and prod if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Okay. And then these get used wherever you can use a variable fabric. Well, in that work.
Three objects at the moment. Notebooks, data pipelines, and Gen 2 data flows can read from the variable library. Yeah. Cool. I'll answer that question. So how to organize variable libraries? So you can have more than one variable library in each workspace. You don't have to have one super massive variable library with all your variables in. What we're sort of doing is separating them out a little bit. So we have one for sort of common values, like for example, for our logging database. So each particular data pipelines that do, say, profit and loss operations, sales, or something else, will read from that common variable library for a logging database because we're logging to the same place. The connection string is going to remain the same. Yeah. And then we have another variable library for the specific functionality of the data pipeline. So we've got a variable library for, say, profit and loss, one for sales, one for whatever. Yeah. So it's thematically separated out. Sometimes there is a little bit of overlap, which tends to be very minimal. But having a massive unwieldy one, we found is a bit administratively heavy, particularly if you want to separate things out. If you've got various developers that are only dealing with the profit and loss, you don't want to be going to other things as well, or read and write access, accidentally overwrite something, which does happen. So yeah, don't forget it is use it for logging parameters, generic items, and your thematically one for connections, other metadata, whatever you need for that particular pipeline. Yeah. Also, we've got lake houses, so we'd have a bronze, silver, and gold lake house for our profit and loss, and another one for operations stuff, and then you just store your variables in each variable library. Cool. Demo. This means I'm going to have to change my screen again. Right. Oh. Let's mirror these displays. Keep changes. Okay. Right, so this is the variable library. We've got workspace ID, database connection, and some other stuff. So, yeah. Okay, right here. So where was I? Yeah, so variable library, we put some variables in here and we're going to show you how to use them. So, right. Has my cluster gone to sleep? Yes. Let me just zoom in a bit. So how in your notebooks do you reference your variable library? Well, if there's a little, anyone use the Spark Notebook utils? Yeah. So Notebook utils is a Microsoft library of functions for your notebooks. And it's really cool. It's got some really great features and functionality in there, like it'll tell you your notebook metadata, show the context and run IDs and all sorts of stuff. So when you're logging stuff, it's really nice. You just run this little code and it'll store all these little details for your pipelines. So in the notebook utils, there's .variable library, .get library. So I've just put my library name in there. Brilliant. Hopefully I can do that. Cool. So now it's gone and read the variable library, and that's gone and read the active value set. So it's got all the IDs in there, and it's got all the variables in there. So you can't print the variable library, even though it's sort of a Python dictionary object. It doesn't like being displayed like one, which is very strange. But using dot notation, say I did have a DB ID in there. So see, let's have a look. DB ID begins at 8017. So could have played the outputs, but there we go. So variable library.id. So you can't restrict what you're reading from the variable library in this case. So it gets all the values in that variable library. So you can't, like, for example, restrict down to a row level. It's if you've got access or read access, you get all or nothing. Yeah. So once you've loaded the variable library, you have to do dot and then the variable name. Yeah. So if I did okay, ID. Boom, brings back the variable. Now, you can get individual variables from the variable library. So again, this seems a nice, clean syntax. Get library, and then the library name. Microsoft, in their infinite wisdom, have get, then this stuff, and then variable library name / the ID. It'd be easier if you could just like take that top one and just say get variable item and then variable library name, then .id. But no, they've got this little thing. Does the same thing, so you can get individual items. Yeah, so the first one gets everything and then you can select it. This one is very more specific. Now, as you can see, if you've got something really secret, it's going to show it. If you use a key vault, got one here for my super secret stuff. When I run this, right, cool, it's gone and got the secret value and redacted. I can still use it. The notebook can still use the secret. You just can't see it. So you can't expose anything like your passwords and things like any sort of sensitive metadata that you use to run your pipeline. So that's the benefit of still using Azure Key Vault. And at the moment in data pipelines and notebooks, if you do use a variable library and anyone keeps something secret, it's exposed. In data pipelines isn't too bad because you can secure your inputs and outputs of the JSON output when you're in a data pipeline, so you can't see it. So if someone goes into monitor, it's just you just can't see it. But when you're running interactive, you can. So just bear in mind of that. So again, if it's secret, if it's sensitive, use Azure Key Vault. Yeah. Just to say you can use variable libraries for anything. I did say here I had select stuff, and it was a select statement. So just selecting everything from super secret data stuff. It's all there, but cool. Again, running the variable library, .select stuff, just a variable name. So I'm just hitting the database. And then it's return those values. So it's just run the select statement because it's just a string. You can use that string anywhere. You would use a normal variable in Python. Cool. Right, now brace yourself. We're going to do data pipelines, and Microsoft have made it ridiculously hard. Well, not ridiculously, just really annoying. So, okay, so I've got a pipeline here which basically copies stuff from the database to the lakehouse, and you've got your data connections all set up. So cool, I've got one here. I've got my connection. I've got the SQL database. I've got the table it's going to. Then I've got the connection for the lakehouse, which lakehouse it's going to, and what table it's going to. Right. Now, if you try and deploy this using deployment pipelines from dev to test to production, it's not going to work because the connections will go over and it's still pointing at dev. Yeah, so it's in test and production, it's all pointing all the way back. So you can use variable libraries to change this. So it's referencing your variable library. Then all you need to do is just change the variables in the variable library, and then it picks it up automatically. So, anyone here like the connection experience in Fabric? No, it's where UI and UX goes to die. It literally was on a call. If it works, cool. One of the main, so here's my connection, cool. Right. So if I go to any connections and gateways, so I've got my dev connection, got my test connection, dev and test. So look, settings, and each connection gets a unique ID. It's a little GUID. Right, brilliant. So that's what you're going to have to use in your variable library to define your connection. You can't use the name or anything. So yeah, you can see like C9C. If you go back to the variable library, I've got my, where am I? Oh, there it is. My lakehouse connection ID. Cool. So I'm using the IDs. Cool. Why do we need IDs? Because I don't know. Microsoft have made it really difficult. You can't choose a list. So if I want to use this across this pipeline, I want to deploy it across workspaces. Whoops, wrong one. If I want to deploy this pipeline across workspaces, I'm going to have to change this every time I deploy it. But using deployment pipelines, sorry, using variable libraries, all I need to do is just do it once. So in your pipeline, you have to add the variable libraries that you want. So I'll just click new here. So, and you can't multi-select because Microsoft hate me. Yeah, why make it easy? where was I? Lakehouse connection ID. Lakehouse ID. Select variable. I don't need those two. Cool, brilliant. So now they're imported, and you can see the name is the variable library name underscore and the variable itself. And as I say, you can select from multiple variable libraries. So if you have like a generic one and a more thematically based one, you can add and choose between them. And if you look at the same variable names across variable libraries, you can just change the variable library name, select it to the say workspace ID. And you can ask me a second if anyone's really good. Why am I using a workspace ID? So right, I've imported them. Now I can use them. Oops, source. So connection. Use dynamic content. And then tucked away in here is variable libraries, library variables. So I want the database connection ID. So database connection ID is the ID of the connection for that database. Cool. Right, okay, then it changes. Connection type is SQL database, cool. Workspace ID, that's the workspace ID. So it's automatically done that. I'm going to change this. Now you can library, oh, sorry, no, system variable. So there is workspace ID. So data factory comes built with a standard variable, so .data factory. So it retains the just gets the workspace ID. I, however, have been putting the workspace ID as a variable because, and I'll show you in a minute. In fact, yeah, sorry, yeah. In fact, no, I'll do it this way. Let's show the annoying way. So workspace ID, we're going to get the workspace ID. Database ID, again, you can't select the name, you have to have the ID. So right here, where am I? Database ID. And you have to go and get the database ID from, if you go to the database. So if you know the Fabric URL, it's where it is, and that's the workspace. Then you've got SQL databases, and then this bit here is the unique ID for that database and that workspace, yeah? So you're going to have to go through and get these IDs, just scrape them out of the URL and copy and paste them. As I say, it's bloody annoying. Yeah, cool. Right, yeah, so database ID, I'll put it in there. Let's click refresh. Then it will prompt you for this. So cool, to put all the variables in, but where you have data factory, it's asking you to put in the required value. Yeah. So what we do, the workspace ID. Hey, it's auto-populated. Brilliant. The only inconsistency about Microsoft is that they're inconsistent. Oh dear, I forgot this recorded. I'm on the Microsoft partner. Oh dear, watch it. I did have a call about I did have a call with Microsoft a couple of weeks ago about the UI UX, and it's basically me just saying, and another thing, yeah, for like an hour. Okay, that's filed. Never mind. So what's it filed on? Yeah, failed to resolve connection. And here's one I've made earlier because the demo gods hate me. So cool. So I've mapped out the connection ID, I've got the SQL database, the workspace ID, and the SQL database ID. So it should know where to go. Failed to refresh authorization token. Oh, God. What was it? SQL database, John. SQL database in Fabric. Yeah. Let's see if that. I don't know. It's a token issue. Have you noticed any enter issues with Fabric recently? There's been token issues. Enter's been having a bit of a wobble. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, the demo gods are not looking down on me. So again, I've created a variable for the lakehouse connection ID, call, going to a lakehouse, workspace ID, call. So let's try and deploy this. But I've done this before because I'm getting the spinning wheel of annoyance where it tries to work out if there's any differences between the two workspaces, and it's really, really slow. When I started this demo, I was clean shaven. See, all the jokes you don't get from ChatGTP. So when Fabric first came out, if you were deploying a pipeline across, even though you have deployment rules in deployment pipelines, it wouldn't change the connection. So you'd have to go in and deploy, update all the connections manually, which is very annoying if you're deploying stuff, particularly in an enterprise environment. It's a little bit better these days with the Python CI/CD library and using DevOps pipelines to do things because there's nice find and replace of stuff. But the deployment pipeline experience is suboptimal, to say the least. You can do things with, it's still sort of Power BI focused around deploying models and reports. But yeah, it can be a bit, hey, cool. Right, yeah, cool. So if I do this, which one? Okay. Oh. So I want to deploy this one. So yeah, I haven't got a pipeline in there at the moment. So we'll deploy that pipeline across. Cool. And in test, I've got a variable library. Yeah, the active value set is here. So it's now for the test one. So when I run the pipeline, it's going to pick it up from test, not dev. Sorry, the default value set, which you can rename as dev or whatever. Cool. So if I run the pipeline, come on. It will now pick up all the variables from that variable library. Still the same library variables. Again, all it's going to go now is get the connection ID for the this database, and then throw it to this database. Run failed, I guess it's authorization. Failed to resolve connection. Refresh tokens expired due to inactivity. Okay, tokens issued. Yes, no, the first. Wonderful. I was a connection. Why is it working? Oh gosh. Oh dear. I ran this yesterday. It worked fine. Well, let's do this. Well, let's see if this works. I'm going to look at it. It might run. Here we go. Do it. It's going to be really embarrassing, and I can't finish on a Sadar. Hey, seems to be cracking on with something. Brilliant. Yeah, so external connections, enter being a censored. Okay, so Fabric variable libraries. So it's a nice centralized location to store your variables for your processes. So I use them a lot in notebooks for connection IDs to, say, logging databases. I have a function notebook which provides a connection to log items for our generic processes. So if something falls over, logs it to the database, goes to the variable library, gets the details back. Brilliant. So yeah, it's a nice centralized location. You can secure it down by read and write access, but you can't secure it down row by row. It's all or nothing, unfortunately. And you can't secure out your sensitive items. Don't forget, it does get backed up to source control. And so the best practice we've sort of defined at the moment is to have a couple of variable libraries, one for each thematic process. Have one for your generic items, your common items, and then have one for profit and loss operations, whatever it is for the various thematic data pipelines or pathways that you have for your data. Cool. You can secure them down to read and write access. And if you don't have access, you can't see them. You can still see the variable, but you can't see the variables in them. Any questions? Does it seem fairly straightforward? Variable library support is now, you can use them in, say, notebooks, data pipelines, Gen2 data flows, and in Fabric user data functions. On a little Python functions you can use them in there now. So you can, however, we have a user data function that sits basically in Fabric, and then we throw error stuff to it. So our data pipeline and our notebooks have a single point of reference where we just throw errors to, and that user data function then logs it to our database. Yeah, so for our pipelines and notebooks, we just got one thing to maintain, throws a JSON to it, writes it to the database. There is occasionally one time of every 500 times, user data functions will lose a connection to variable libraries, and then it'll fail, which is awful because the thing that you use to design to capture failures has failed. So how can I capture the thing that's failed? Do I have another function that failed? Yeah. So just be wary. These data functions are now out of preview, so hopefully the reliability will get better. Questions?
What were the three items you said about new?
Sorry?
What were the three items?
Use data functions, can use them now. Notebooks, data pipelines, and Gen2 data flows. No, not at the moment, no. Probably not on the roadmap.
Did they shoot?
Yeah, I think I did like a shortcut. So I did see something from Laura Graham Brown, but I've never used that myself. At the moment, the functionality is just those 4 items. You may be able to use them elsewhere.
So the workspace
Level. No, the workspace is contained. You can only reference that variable library from within that workspace. You can have multiple variable libraries within that workspace.
Okay.
So,
Would you say my variables?
yeah. Yes, you can deploy using a deployment. Yeah, yeah, you can deploy. You might have seen the variable library. I've already. Yeah. Yeah, so that's the 2 methods. You can either have create your dev workspace and have 3 value sets: dev, test, and prod. Then click on dev to be the active one in dev. Then we deploy it to test. You have to click on the active value set for test, and then the active value set for prod. Yeah. Yeah. Or you can have the same variable library and maintain them manually in each workspace. You don't have to deploy them. It's how you're going to maintain things. How worried about. They shouldn't be, as they don't store sensitive stuff in them, so that takes that worry away. But then again, you can also lock them down to users and groups and stuff like that.
If you read
Yeah. Can do. Yes, in deployment pipelines. In Fabric variable library, in DevOps CI/CD, you set an option to say if you're deploying to test, use this active value, use this value set. And then for production, you do the same thing. So you can specify in DevOps CI/CD pipelines, which active value set. So you just deploy the pipeline, then it sets the active value for that particular workspace. Any questions?
It's a preview job.
Still in preview at the moment. Yeah, from last read, yeah. Yeah.
The library is database connection ID.
Yeah.
So I have a workspace where the destination is going to one of the database. So when I create this database connection with a centralized account so that anybody can run the data flow. So that database ID can I use into data flow so that everybody can run. Because normally when we connect to the database, we use MFA authentication by single user. If a group of team are using that work. So you create a connection to that database using whatever credentials. If it's a Fabric SQL database, it seems to only like OAuth2 username at the moment. I'm still used to have workspace identity service principal. They seem to have got rid of that annoyingly. So yeah, you set your connection, and then you can set your database, sorry, your workflow to use that connection, which will then use the authentication in that connection to connect to it. So if you've got a sort of generic user account or your own credentials have got access to it, I recommend creating service accounts like it's 2003. Cybersecurity hate me because I have to have a service account because OAuth is used loads through Fabric rather than using something nice and secure like service principals or managed identities, which Microsoft have been pushing for the last 20 years. No, we've got to go back to having a user account. So have a generic service account for your connections is probably one of the recommendations I've seen in the enterprise and SME sort of space at the moment. Questions? Got 5 minutes left, so we'll just stare at each other. Shall we end it? Hey, if you've got any questions, it's really helped deployment. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Azure Key Vault is an easy setup. You just create the Key Vault and you start adding secrets to it. You have to add in the access user group to because you can have more defined. I think you can have more defined roles for your Azure Key Vault. So you can have Key Vault keeper, secret owner, and break various things down, or you can just have sort of generic one. For sensitive items that you don't want to expose, Key Vault is still the way to go. For the regular process, variable libraries. So, for example, in Key Vault, we keep our service principal ID and service principal connection secret, which allows authentication for some of our larger pipelines. So that should be secret because if anyone gets access to it, it's no good. So, but for variable library, I say path names, random connection IDs. That's fine. Don't store anything super sensitive in there. Cool.